honorable delegates, heads of state, leaders of nations, distinguished representatives of peoples great and small, I greet you not as a career diplomat, nor as a man bred for banquet halls and handshakes. I do not come to you speaking the rehearsed language of polished politics. I come to you as a soldier of my people, as a guardian of a wounded land, as a son of a continent that has carried the cross of the world, yet has never worn its crown. My name is Captain Ibrahim Traore, President of Burkina Faso, and today I speak not only for the 22 million souls in my nation, but for a continent whose stories have been twisted, whose pain has been ignored, and whose dignity has been repeatedly auctioned off at the altar of foreign interests. Africa is not Tobago. Africa is not a battlefield. Africa is not your experiment, your puppet, your warehouse of raw materials. Africa is rising not to kneel, but to stand. And today I say before this great assembly of nations, Africa will not kneel, one on the false generosity of global politics. For decades you've sent us aid with one hand while extracting our lifeblood with the other. You build wells in our villages while your corporations drain our rivers. You donate vaccines yet patent the cures. You speak of climate action yet continue to fund the very forces that burn our forests and dry our lakes. What kind of generosity is this? The kind that feeds the mouth but silences the voice. The kind that keeps a man alive just enough to keep him dependent. We are not blind to this hypocrisy. Let me be clear, we are not ungrateful for sincere humanitarian assistance, but we reject a global order that disguises exploitation as partnership. We reject financial institutions that lend with one hand and steal sovereignty with the other. Africa no longer wants charity. We want justice. We want control over our own destinies. Too on the chains of colonialism and its modern descendants. Our wounds did not begin with us. They were inherited legacies of an empire-building madness that saw us not as humans, but chiefs, as cargo laboratories. My ancestors were not consulted when maps were drawn with rulers and compasses in Berlin. The borders of Burkina Faso, like those of many African nations, were not carved by our ancestors, but by men who had never stepped foot on our soil, who knew nothing about languages, our tribes, or our spirits. Today, colonialism has a new face. It wears suits, it hosts forums, it signs contracts in Geneva and Paris and Washington. But it still takes without consent. It still dictates instead of dialogues. It still silences instead of listening. If you want to talk about peace, then let's begin by unlearning the arrogance that peace is something only you can teach us. 3, on resource exploitation and the myth of development. They call us developing as if the theft of centuries did not set us back. As if the gold from our lands, the diamonds from our rivers, the oil beneath our feet did not build the very skyscrapers in which this assembly sits. Let us speak plainly. Burkina Faso is rich, Africa is rich. Rich in minerals and culture and wisdom and youth. But you have taught us to measure richness in GDP and export value.
So guys, as you've seen from the Burkina Faso's President Ibrahim Traore, what he's trying to implement, or what he's trying to say, is that the international funds, the international funding, or the international funding agencies which lend African countries money, what he's trying to say is that these countries are lending African countries money, but in return they want something out of it. That's why they always try as much as possible to lend or whatever is being needed in a different country. But Traore here is trying to protect his own country from being from the narrative being twisted, whereby people are saying like Traore is trying to be an independent president to his own country. Yeah, he's trying to make his country work for its own. He's trying to make his country be independent. He's trying to make his country grow from independency, but not from depending from other countries' funds or other countries' funding agencies. And hereby he's trying to protect his country by saying that his country is being viewed. He himself, as Traore, he's being viewed as a sarcastic president. He's being viewed as someone who is after something. But that's what people are saying, and that's what people are viewing. But from his own perspective, Ibrahim Traore, the president of Burkina Faso, is hereby trying trying to convince other African presidents that you can still depend on yourself as a country if you manage your own funds as a country. And from Ibrahim, you can as well see that Ibrahim Traore, he is one of the African presidents who is trying to make his own country, Burkina Faso and Africa, as independent as possible, in a way that he's trying to send a message to international lending agencies or international lending funds that he doesn't want to be lended funds so that they can have something in return to them.
There comes a moment in the life of a nation when silence is betrayal, when continued obedience is suicide, and when bowing to the same hands that choke you is no longer diplomacy, it is surrender. My name is Captain Ibrahim Traore. I do not speak with the polish of career diplomats. I do not wear the cologne of multinational boardrooms. I was not trained in Washington nor groomed in Geneva. I speak from the battlefield where my people bleed and the soil remembers. I speak for a nation that has long been treated like a debtor's prison. And today I speak directly to the International Monetary Fund, not with trembling hands, but with a voice rooted in centuries of African pain and now African awakening. For too long, the IMF has posed as a benevolent doctor prescribing economic treatment to sick nations. But what we've learned, what we've suffered, is that your medicine often kills the patient. Your loans arrive with smiles, but they are poisoned arrows wrapped in contracts. You speak of stabilization, but you deliver strangulation. You speak of reform, but what you really mean is obedience to models built in foreign labs never meant for African soil. But we are not your laboratory. We are not your experiments. We are not pawns in your economic chess game. Burkina Faso and the whole of Africa is waking up. And when we wake, we do not ask for permission to breathe. You see, I come not to beg for cancellation. I come not to plead for relief. I come to tell you what no African leader has dared say loudly enough. We no longer accept economic policies that reduce our people to beggars. While our gold lines the vaults of the West, we no longer dance to the rhythm of conditionalities that gut our public services, cripple our farmers, and force our youth into exile. We no longer accept being told that good governance means handing over our national wealth to foreign firms with smiling consultants. So today we begin a new conversation, not one between debtor and lender, but one between equals, between nations, between truth and falsehood. And this is not a press release, this is a reckoning, and it begins now. One, the chains of debt, a modern form of slavery. Let us speak plainly, without euphemism, without the polite lies of diplomacy. Debt, the kind you offer Africa, is not a tool of development. It is not a bridge to prosperity. It is a shekel. It is modern slavery, dressed in suits and spreadsheets. You call it structural adjustment. We call it structural punishment. You label it financial discipline. We experience it as generational despair. You offer it as partnership. But when one partner profits while the other bleeds, it is not partnership, it is plunder. Let me ask you, how can a nation rich in gold, uranium, cobalt, and fertile land be poor? How can a continent that fuels the industries of the world not afford to feed its own children? We are told it is mismanagement, corruption, incompetence. Yes, Africa has its wounds, but many of those wounds were inflicted by the very hands now offering us Band-Aids soaked in interest. Let me tell you what this debt looks like in real life, not on your PowerPoint slides, but on our streets. It looks like children studying by candlelight because the national power grid was privatized and sold to foreign investors who charge prices our people cannot pay. It looks like hospitals with broken beds, no antibiotics, and mothers dying in childbirth because your conditions demanded we slash public spending to qualify for your help. It looks like millions of African graduates with degrees in hand but no future, job-creating sectors were outsourced, sold off, or collapsed under your imposed liberalization policies. And worst of all, it looks like dignity broken. You see, the repayment plans you create are not economic formulas. They are death sentences. You lend us $500 million and ask for $2 billion in return over decades through interest restructuring fees, currency controls, and privatization clauses that rob us of our national assets. Tell me, what is the moral justification? You say the contracts were signed willingly, but let me ask, is it consent when the patient is bleeding and you are the only one holding medicine with a price tag and a clause? Is it choice when the gun is not pointed at your head but at the starving child behind you? No, Your Excellencies at the IMF, this is not consent. It is economic coercion. This is not development. It is domination. This is not globalization. It is neo-colonialism in financial ropes. And we, the new generation of African leadership, are no longer blind. We are no longer grateful for crumbs from the tables our labor built. We are done applauding policies that hollow out our economies in the name of efficiency. We will no longer trade our sovereignty for loans that disappear into the hands of consultants, only to return as debt for our grandchildren. Let me be even more clear. Africa does not owe you. You owe Africa. You owe us for the gold taken on the colonial boots. You owe us for the minerals that power your smartphones while our villages remain in darkness. You owe us for the diamonds that dazzled your palaces while we bled in silence. And yet, even in all this, we are not asking for charity. We are asking for justice. True justice begins with the end of exploitative debt structures. Justice means allowing African nations to audit what we owe, where it came from, and who truly benefited. Justice means allowing us the dignity to chart our own financial futures, not as clients, but as equals. And if this message feels uncomfortable, then good.
Ibrahim Traore is trying to fight for Africans in general. Yeah, he's trying to make his country work and depend on its own self. And Ibrahim Traore is trying to say that whatever the advantages he's getting from the colonists is that the colonists are trying as much as possible to try and control Africa, but he's here telling Africans that Africans wake up, shine and rise, work for yourselves. Africans, you are here to implement our own agendas and not depend on other people's heads. That's what Ibrahim is trying to tell Africans, most of Burkina Faso. And according to the video of Sina, he's trying to send a strong message to the IMF and to the UN that whatever the agencies or whatever the companies or whatever the organizations are lending Burkina Faso, they should lend, but they should not expect anything in return. That's what he's trying to implement to his country, and that's what he's trying to show people of his country, that we have to depend on ourselves. No matter how much other organization or international organization try to bring to us, they should bring, but they should not expect anything in return from people from Burkina Faso. And that's what Ibrahim is trying to implement and trying to make each African and each citizen of Burkina Faso understand clearly.
You call it development when a foreign company owns 90% of a gold mine on our land. You call it progress when your security forces guard cobalt mines but not our children's schools. That is not progress, that is piracy with legal documents. From now on, we will define development on our own terms. Development that puts children in classrooms, not minerals on cargo ships. Development that respects the land, the people, and the soul of a nation. For on sovereignty and interference. Why is it that when an African nation makes independent choices, we are called unstable? Why is it that when we seek military cooperation outside the colonial sphere, we are labeled a threat? Burkina Faso has chosen to walk a path of sovereignty that is not a threat to peace. It is a declaration of adulthood. We are no longer under your guardianship. We are no longer your junior partners in diplomacy. We are a free people. If a nation chooses partners that respect it rather than exploit it, that is not rebellion. That is wisdom. Let it be known, no foreign power will dictate the alliances of Burkina Faso. We will build relations based on mutual respect, not historical guilt or present-day intimidation.